So I'll be teaching that, and one of the big things I'll be teaching is how to do the join at the retreat. And it's just like so nice. So most of the people there aren't crocheters. There's just like a small group that are. So it's like, you know, a lot of sewing and quilting happens, lots of knitting. Those are like the focus. And then I teach a crochet class to those that want to learn some crochet. And we'll just do this cowl. We hang out by the fireplace. And April in Pennsylvania, you still usually do want the fireplace. There's a nice little seating area there. We just sit around for like an hour or however long they need, 2 hours, and crochet, and I'll help them. And it'll be fun. Little group of maybe 5, 6 people, just kind of depends on the year. So there's that. This is awesome. Highly recommend this pattern. Last year, in case you're interested, last year I taught a scarf called Spiders. Every time I see these things, because I have one crochet design on Ravelry, so I have tried to design before. Every time I see anything, I'm just like, oh, that's so smart. Why didn't I think of that? So here's another thing I wish I had thought of. This is called Spiders, so it goes from like very holy, and then as you go up the scarf, it decreases. And this is by Katya Novikova, and I also got this through Ravelry. This is crocheted in Madeline Tosh Merino Light. Gotta love that yarn. Totally. That yarn is crack. And this is really not representing the color very accurately. Maybe I can get in a little bit closer. That's better. This is called Turquoise. And I don't recall what chart or what hook I used. I tend to crochet more loosely than a lot of designers, so I usually have to go down a hook size or two if I'm trying to get gauge. This took just a little over one skein. Like I was able to crochet the actual scarf with one skein, but then there's a border around the edge. It took about 1 1/4 skeins of the Tosh. There's like 400 some yards on a skein of Tosh Merino Light. It took just a little over 1 to do this. And their scarves were beautiful. So this was what we did last year. And I love this scarf. So my favorite crochet hooks are the tulip, and I've got a couple that aren't in the set right now because I'm using them. But I have this little case with the scissors, and you've got your tapestry needles and a ruler. This is a really nice case. So if you crochet a lot, these are nice hooks. And I know that you might think, oh, I'm good with what hooks I have. But I will tell you, I thought the same thing. And I had the like regular clover, like the gold, regular standard hooks that you can get. My friend Cynthia was like, you need to try the tulip hooks. This was like years ago. And I'm like, I don't need any other hooks. These are fine. I'm good. And then I tried one, and I'm never going back. I still have the clover hooks just in case of emergency. But these guys, I once like compared the shape. I get less snags. I get less splitting of yarn. I can crochet faster. I can crochet faster with these hooks. I love them. Like I said, I didn't think I needed anything else. I was completely happy with what I had. But if you try these tulip hooks, you will not be able to go back. Be warned, but try them. So, and if you really love them, you can buy the hooks individually. If you really love them, get the set. I also have the steel hook set because I have done a lot of like thread crochet, doilies, and things like that, and that's also really wonderful. And I've tried other hooks. Like I've tried other Japanese hooks. They're not as nice as these, and they're even, they're really pricey, but they just weren't as nice. So tulip is the way. Okay, what else? My plans. So my plans are to work on Rabbit Run. And so my birthday is April 30th, and I've been planning my birthday start. I may have more than one, but I have been planning this. And by the way, again, I know I said this before, but you crocheters are genius, or cross stitchers are genius for thinking of like let's have a birthday start. Like, yes, that is smart. So I'm going to do American Flag Quilt Sampler by Rosewood Manor. Isn't that beautiful? Like, hey, I'm a quilter, right? So why wouldn't I stitch a quilt? I might finish it faster than if I actually made a real quilt like this. because that's how I roll. Okay, so that is gorgeous. And this is just DMC. So yesterday I went and I picked out some fabric. This is 40 count ivory. And I think that'll work really nice. I was thinking of maybe something more mottled that was hand dyed, but this is what she had in 40 count, and it looks really good with the colors. The only color it does not look good with, here's my bag of DMC, is this cream right here. It looks a lot like the fabric color. So I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. Maybe get an over dyed floss or just sub something else out. I don't know, but that's my plan. So that's gonna be my birthday start. I'm really excited. If you've got this, if you want to stitch along with me, I'd be glad to have you join in. I expect, this is like, I'm calling this epic, okay? I don't know when it's going to be done. I don't have a set time frame. I'm just going to enjoy the ride. I'm just going to start on my birthday. I'm just going to work on it when I feel like. It gets done when it gets done. And then I will frame it because it is awesome. So there's that. So that's a plan for this month as well. Other plans. So I mentioned this Vintage Birds. I had the fabric, I've got the chart, and I just picked up the floss yesterday, all the called for floss to do this. So I think I'm going to start this month. I don't know, next month, in a day-ish. No, I'm not starting it that soon, sorry. Okay, delete that. Sometime in April, I think I will start this. Maybe for my birthday, maybe sooner. It depends on how Rabbit Run goes and how much startitis I get. Okay. Another future plan, this is not for the imminent future, but for the more distant future. I was talking about this in my last video, and some commenting ensued between Helen, East Coast Crafter, and Lynette, Homesteading on the Homefront, about doing a stitch along. So, the Cardinal, 'tis the season. We proposed to start a stitch along for the Cardinal Labor Day weekend, so you got plenty of time to get your book before it goes out of print again, to find your fabric, to get your floss. So if you'd like to join in with us, that's what our plans are. Would love to have you, and we haven't come up with a hashtag yet, but we will do that. So think about that. That Cardinal is super cute. I'm kind of thinking, I was looking at some Confederate gray that was actually kind of a green color. I don't know if I'll do Confederate gray, but maybe a greenish color. I don't know. It seems to me that the Addicted Sisters had stitched this, and maybe one did it in blue and one did it in green, and it was gorgeous. So I don't think you can go wrong here, but I'm kind of leaning towards a green. And as an additional note, I saw in person somewhere this yesterday, and oh my gosh, I could not stop staring at it on the wall. So sorry, this video is getting kind of long, but let me just tell you, I have a local needlework shop, and I have mixed feelings about the local needlework shop. She's great, and she's a nice lady. She's in her 80s and still running a needlework shop. Props to her. My frustration with the needlework shop is that on a couple of occasions when I've driven down there, and it's about a 45-minute drive for me, the shop has been closed during posted business hours, and there's no sign on the door indicating why it's closed or if it's going to reopen at that day or what's going on. So I've been frustrated that I've gone down there twice, and it's not been open. But I needed to go. And I do like her, and I needed to go get fabric and floss. So I just said, you know what? I will just call and make sure she's there and that she's going to be there, you know, like she's not closing early or anything, whatever. So I did. And that's where I was that I saw this. And it is gorgeous. So that has to go on my to stitch list. So that's where I got my fabric for my 2 projects, got my floss. And I was really impressed because, so, you know, I had been shopping there before I'd stopped cross-stitching for a while. So I haven't been to the store in maybe 4 or 5 years. I don't know. She had a bunch of new market releases. So it was just really cool to see a lot of the new charts that she had. And I was just glad she was, still doing well. So that was good. And I'll just always call before I go now. Like if I'm already in that area, that's fine. I can stop by. But if not, I'm just going to call, make sure she's open, and then I will be happy. So think about joining us. Okay. Whoa. Okay. So I'm suddenly done. Okay. I have a little bit more for you. I had as I was weaving. So in my last video at the end, I showed you how I measure out the yarn for weaving, and I thought you'd be interested to see some of the other steps that are involved in making fabric. So I took videos of the different steps of me getting the fabric onto the loom up to the point of weaving, and then I stopped because I've said, I don't really have anyone to like film me easily at certain times. So, but it gives you an idea of the process. And there are a lot of steps to it. So I thought you might be interested, and so that'll be the next thing you see on the video is a little bit more of what it takes to get yarn onto the loom until it becomes fabric. So thanks so much for watching. It's been great hanging out with you today, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I will be back in a couple of weeks, and I'm sure I will be excited about all the retreat stuff that I've been doing. Hope you have a great holiday, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. In my previous video, I was mentioning that I'd measured out my yarn, and I explained a little bit about how I measure out the correct width and length of my yarn and the equipment that I use in order to measure my yarn for towels or any project. And now I've taken the 3 warp chains that I wound on my warping board, which you see hanging off the front of the loom here. And what I've done is I've spread them in the rattle, and the rattle is this black piece across the top here with teeth. I've attached the leaf sticks to the loom, and this is the apron rod back here where the yarn is. These are the leaf sticks. So this is the cross, which I mentioned too. The cross is what keeps all the threads in the same order that I wound them. And then what I use the rattle for, this is a built-in rattle that comes with Luette looms, which is the brand of loom that I have. The rattle spreads the warp to the width that it's going to need to be, 20 inches, for the entire project. So it's spreading it across the back, and I warp from back to front. So this yarn is going to get wound around here and onto the back beam, which is kind of hiding down there. And so I need to have the yarn spread to the final width that I'm going to weave it as it's getting wound onto the back of the loom. So the first step then is spreading the warp in this rattle. I've already done that, so now the warp is 20 inches across. And the next step then for me is to use a method. There's a lot of funny weaving terms, and the way that I wind on is called the crank and yank method. So basically you're pulling on those chains to increase the tension and even out the tension of the yarn. I'm going to pull the chains open, and then on the side of the loom there's a knob, and I'll turn that to wind the yarn onto the back of the loom. So that's spreading the warp takes maybe like 20 to 30 minutes, and then winding onto the back of the loom just depends on how well I wound the yarn to begin with. If it's very even tension wise when I wound it on the board, then it could be a really fast, maybe 20-15 minute process. If the yarn's uncooperative, or if I was kind of inconsistent, could take 30 minutes, maybe 40. We'll just see how it goes. So I'll show you another video of like the next step. Okay, so I've begun winding on, and I'm reminded of how physical weaving is. So here are my chains, and I pull on them to even out the tension among all of the threads. And then after I've done that, I run around to the side because I'm warping alone. If you warp with someone else, which you're always encouraged to do, it goes faster, but I'm used to doing it by myself. So I turn the crank here to wind the yarn onto the back beam. And you can see I've got a piece of paper down there. And that is keeping the threads of each layer separate as I'm winding it on. So after I wind a couple of revolutions, then I have to run to the back of the loom. And I have to pull on this paper to make sure that everything is taut, that my paper is not going crooked. And then I run to the front of the loom and keep repeating. So I just keep going back and forth around the loom multiple times until the warp gets all the way wound onto the back. So I'm all finished winding on, and not surprisingly, I ran into problems because this is crafting. So I did a really good job with the right side and the middle chain, but then the left chain I didn't wind on quite as evenly, so I had to spend more time with that. And then towards the end, as I was winding on, one of my strands of yarn here broke that was holding the sticks in place, then I had to replace it, which that's happened to me before. I wanted to mention I also have this little string here, and this is keeping the warp from jumping out of the rattle, but I'm done now. And I trimmed everything nice and even. And now I'm to the point where I'm going to pull these ends down here into the loom so that I can start threading the heddles, and that's part of what gives my fabric a pattern. So that'll be the next step. So now I've been threading the heddles. This is part of what creates the pattern, and I'm halfway across the warp. So the different shafts, this is 1, and at the back is 8 there. The threads, each thread is threaded on a different shaft and then repeated, and that helps create the pattern. And I have what's called Texsolve heddles. These are heddles here. That's what the yarn's going through. And one of the things that I like about this loom, and Texsolve heddles in particular, they're a little bit trickier to thread, but as you can see, I don't need to keep many on this side to keep the loom balanced. And it's really easy on this loom if I run out of heddles on a shaft to just move them to another shaft. So that's one of the benefits of this particular loom, as well as, if I back up, being able to remove the breast beam which goes across here. So I can sit inside the loom really close in order to thread. And I have short arms, so I really need to be able to sit close without having to lean a lot. So for me, this is a really great loom ergonomically. So in order to remember what I'm doing here as far as the threading, sometimes I can just remember, or if not, I've got my iPad here, and this is iWeave It, and it's telling me what to thread next. So it's a neat program, and I've got it on my iPad, and also I have the version for my computer, so it helps me design projects. So I finished threading all of the heddles, which are back here, and then I had to slay the reed. As I said, weaving has kind of a funny vocabulary. So slaying the reed is basically determining the density of my fabric. It would be like choosing a knitting needle or a crochet hook to get a certain gauge. So it's allowing me to space out my threads according to the yarn that I'm using and the pattern that I'm using. So this is a 10 dent reed, and I have 2 threads in each dent, and so I will have 20 ends per inch. After I slayed the 396 or 8, whatever, ends, then I tied on to the apron rod on the front of the loom, and now I'm going to do the tie up on the floor, which is assigning a treadle that I'll push down to a shaft on my loom to create the pattern. So after I do that, then I need to test and see if the pattern I threaded is correct and that the way I tied up the treadles is correct. So the next step is to check for mistakes, and there's usually one or two, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I finished my tie-up, and I just kind of wanted to explain what's happening. These are called the lambs, and they're attached above to the harnesses, which pull down, which are what are pulled down by my pushing on these treadles down here in order to make the pattern. So the order that I tie things up, the order that I thread things, and the order that I press my feet down make different patterns. So there's a lot of combinations possible in weaving. So the lambs are tied up to the treadles, and one thing that I love about this loom is it's very easy to tie up. I don't have to spend a lot of time climbing around on the floor because you can see there are little screws here. This is for shaft 1, 2, 3, all the way back to 8. And this Texsolve cord just has loops in it, and it's really easy, even for me to do one-handed, to just slide the loop on or pop the loop off these screws. So it's really nice. I have all of the 8 treadles tied up for the pattern, and then the last 2 treadles are to do plain weave. This is going to be a twill pattern, and I'm going to do plain weave in the hems, so I'm just using those at the beginning and end of the towel. The funny little green loop is to remind my foot which shaft is number 5, so I don't have to look for it because that's a key point in this pattern. Okay, so those are the lambs and the treadles, and you can see that I have been testing out the pattern. So first I spread the warp a bit with these cardboard sticks, and then I started testing the pattern and checking for mistakes. This is always kind of a hold your breath moment where you're checking. So I used some of my leftover yarn on bobbins, and I just have to check really carefully and make sure that there's no threads doing anything weird that would tell me that I did something wrong somewhere. And happily, it's hard to believe, but happily I can't find anything right now. So I think I'm going to be able to just start weaving. And so I was just testing out the pattern to practice and seeing what it looked like, and this lets me see what the different colors look like in the pattern as well, in case I decide I don't like something or I do like something. And I'm really liking these two. I think they're both really pretty, and I'm really excited to weave this pattern. So I'm gonna stop sampling and I'm gonna get to it. It's difficult to believe, but I found no mistakes in my threading or my tie-up, and the pattern's coming along really nicely. I had to use this blue first because I just couldn't get it out of my head. And I love how it looks, so I'm really happy with the pattern. You can see here, this is the hem that I've woven in a narrower or a finer thread. And then the bottom kind of border of the towel, and then the towel. So I'll repeat this border at the other end of the towel and then a hem again. Really, really pleased with it, and this has been such a fun project to weave and fairly easy to remember, so I'm really enjoying it.